Hi, my name is Benedict. In this video we're looking through the newer device in the collection, which doesn't really have a name, it just happened. We'll actually whip straight into an AB or an ABC. There's a mix made. Every single instrument benefits from an instance or two of the Fl-Ch23, 23 because it's this year, and we'll hear it with, we'll hear it without, and there's also a third version where we're going to take off all of the other devices which are appearing in here, like the, let's pop them aside for the moment, like the analog rooms, which is where this all started out, and the tape and tube being Looser and Hornet's analog stage. Looser is available for free as part of this collection of devices. So they three different versions of mix. Here's the original with all of the choruses. A big, rich, deep sound. If we take off the chorus from everything. Now there are some things about this mix that I like, but just listen to the difference, that's all I'm asking. So a lot of size disappears with that. If we now go take off the other things, which is the reverb and the looser tapes, it comes very, very flat. Now, to be incredibly fair, which is actually probably a little bit of a liability for me, I have to some extent level matched these three different versions, because otherwise they will naturally get a little quieter as there is less stuff happening. So you can think, oh, but they sound better, cleaner, because they simply come across as being a little louder. So if we even that out, bypass the gains, no effects at all. Adding a couple of instances of echo switch and the reverb and looser tape, and then adding in the choruses. How everything just fills out, including those drums. Flat, very flat. That's enough of that, just showing you how you can get all this extra life in a mix by applying these sorts of devices with great care. So here's a test synth running the chorus device. If we switch it out, got a rather flat synth sound. Now we've got a really rich sound that feels like it has an existence, like it has a place in the universe. And mixing's a lot about having a place in the universe. We can turn off the echo. And then bring that echo back in. To purchase this, it is $5 over at Ko-fi or Coffee. So go over there. There will be a QR code on screen and a link down below. Please be sure to support people who support you. There is a lot these days of people just thinking that they're owed, and unfortunately they're the very people who get nowhere in the business because they don't invest in themselves, like they don't commit to anything, they don't sacrifice part of themselves for this, and as a result they don't work with others, and they sure as, and somebody else pointed this out even though it's self-evident, they sure as don't get to work with people who are better than them, because as soon as you're good at something you will start charging for it. If you're not charging for it, like if somebody's not charging for something, it tells you that they're not really good at it and or they don't believe in themselves. So please pop over, purchase this, back yourself, because if you pay for it, you're far more likely to invest the time to understand it, and any device needs time invested to understand why it's different from other things. I deliberately go out of my way to try to build things that are a little different, that are going to deliver differently from formula, the cliche, because the problem with doing the cliche is that you immediately disappear in the ball of everybody else who sounds exactly the same. Right, let's start to look deeper into the device. The first and most important thing to know to be able to understand how to get mileage from this is what's it doing on the inside. And that's in understanding how the audio travels through it. We obviously have sound coming in from the outer world, which is this amazing electric piano sound. It goes into a pair of delays, one dedicated to the left, one dedicated to the right. Here I show the one on the right shifted off a little. That's because we have the offset control that allows us to move the one on the right back in time a little bit. They are modified or modulated by the modulation section. The output of these delays, the echoes, goes to a saturation device. Oh, something I forgot to show in here was the clean signal obviously goes to the dry output. It was probably so self-evident I forgot to draw it. The wet signal after processing goes into a saturator. Where I've done this sort of thing before, I've tended to do it before it goes into, but I think it's actually more interesting to do after. That then goes to the outputs. So that is what we hear here of the chorusy signal. There is an instance of this wet signal that goes from a saturation output, so that's your moving bit, goes into the saturation. It is summed to mono and sent to this echo, which lives down here. We can, as you see, switch this echo off, but it is always and only ever fed from this point. So it's getting all of this going down to here. And it does it in mono, deliberately, because that's part of how this sounds. I could have done it in stereo, but I've got tons of stereo delays. Everybody's got stereo delays. Few have the courage to do mono delays. And the mono against the massive stereo that's happening here is part of the contrast. And the idea was not so much to create big, bouncy delays, as you hear, but it actually works really, really nicely, and it matches the real world in the sense that that echo, when it comes back, is going to seem less dramatically out here, stereo, because we only get this much stereo when we're close to something, so it creates this immediate sense of depth in actually being mono. So then that echo is fed back into the output, but as you hear, this runs actually completely independently, so you can use this echo completely on its own without using the chorus signal directly in the mix. It will still be there because anything that you do here is what feeds the echo input. So you can use dry and that, or a combination, anything thereof. Understanding how that works and really sort of getting it inside you will help you to make the most of the device. Walking through, moving in order, we have our main time offset. We'll turn this off for now. This is just our time setting for the two main delays, left and right, out of which we create our chorus sound. That will go a little longer than the average chorus is likely to do, because sometimes a really nice sound can be achieved with a long chorus sound. Obviously we won't get much action happening from that until we add modulation. So it's that movement of this going up and down that makes that. There's also a fine control that gives us up to 5 milliseconds of very fine control. So if you're here and sort of going, this knob's just a little too coarse, then you can add another 5 milliseconds. If you wanted, you could leave that sitting in the middle. Go, yep, look, that's about right, but I want it to be there. Either way, you can use that how you see fit. But with both of these done, that is 0 milliseconds. You've then got an offset. This is offsetting. Let's just turn this down so we've got no confusion. It's creating a few milliseconds of offset between the left and right. So it's quite simply taking that right-hand echo and moving it backwards in time a bit more than the main time has already set. So most people know that as Hass. And yes, in mono that can potentially create some problems, but it really isn't an issue by the time you've done all kinds of other things to this. I'm not going to suggest that you use that as your only way of getting stereo, because you are probably going to create some difficulties later, but that's a pretty common control to have. So we can offset, and then as we add in our movement, we get a kind of stereo signal. Feedback, you'll see there's a little marker. This is both positive and negative. This may whine a little. Or to negative. Negative means that it's phase inverting itself as it feeds back. So feedback feeds back positively. Negative feedback means that it feeds back in a phase inversed form. You get slightly different results. So if you're going, yeah, but I don't, try it over here, and then you might go, oh, now I do. So that's your main function there within the time domain. And then obviously, as we've been looking at already, you've got the modulation. We've got rate and depth. They both have buttons beside them, indicating more. It is possible to go incredibly fine. Now, the major reason for this is if you are working in situations like this, where you're really creating a resonator, and you find that these amounts, like one or the other of these amounts, is just too much. So most of the time you will leave them on. Stereo. Stereo is the stereoness of the modulation. So we've got our LFO in here, the one of them controlling both of these, and then we can change the phase relationship between what goes to the left and what goes to the right. Pretty standard stuff, but commonly it's just an either or switch, whereas the device that I've used here, which has a really lovely sound, and part of the reason this has made it through and the new devices have been made, is that it provides an output which we can set between locked together and up to completely inverted 180 degrees out. So we can create a kind of stereo there and a kind of stereo here. The mix, quite simply dry, wet. You will find that the wet adds because we've got this saturator in here. It actually starts to add clipping. If we add enough of it, it will just start to clip, depending upon the signal that you put in. So it sounds great because in part it adds level, which means you might want to pull your wet back a little bit, but it is adding saturation and sparkle to that sound. this really lovely, shiny, soft, enveloping chorus that we get from this. That's what I was really pleased with, and I was hearing that sound in other things as I was doing it, as I was making the R3 500. I was hearing this sort of going, oh, I've got to make more of that. This actually was started, and then in the middle of doing this, I thought, what if? And that's where echo switch came from. Now we add in this echo on. As I said, this is the signal, the wet signal, post-saturation, tapped, summed to mono, and then sent into this echo. So its initial properties are everything that you've done here, just wet. There is no dry comparison here, it's just wet. So you're taking that and adding it back into the signal. We've got our initial time, which will go out to half of a second, so 500 milliseconds, which is plenty. Initially it was designed really just for shorts, for slapbacks. I think part of the reason it works also so nicely is because it's mono and this wet signal is prone to being somewhat louder than the dry signal if you've got the knobs at parity, because that's saturation. So it's adding a more complex mono signal back to it. Plus, of course, we're taking the modulation here and it's being moved back in time. So we've got a more complex modulation. Feedback. Modulation, and that's just directly borrowing it from this rate. It's not affected by the depth thing, but it's affected by the rate control. You will commonly need to keep this lower than the depth up top, otherwise it will become unsettling. But if you want it to be unsettling, it is designed to be able to do this. We've then got high pass and low pass filters. And I think that's a big part of why this sounds really nice. In this situation, they come together really well. So you can make this nice dark sound which sits behind your main signal. Your main signal's got this nice width to it, which brings it forward. We can create space. I mix, it's very rare that anything goes through my mix without having an echo in it somewhere to position it in depth space. So this gives you the ability to position in depth space straight away. If it's a sound that doesn't need a lot of work, I might use that as enough just to handle all your depth space. But if it's a signal that I'm going to have more complexity to, then I sometimes will have several layers of depth space, just as a drum kit commonly has the drum room and then goes into the main space of the track, the synth reverb. An electric piano like this will highly likely have a little bit of localized space around it. And this gives us that. And once it goes off to the sends for the space that's the whole song, you will end up with a really nice rich sound. And remember, the donor is pretty darn flat and unexciting. And becomes all kinds of lovely. So it's a tool that's built out of the mixing process. It's not designed to be a look how great I sound on my own, but I think it does, but to be able to build sounds that are going to sit really, really nicely in the mix. As to how you use it, well, that's sort of really up to you. I think I've covered most of the basics there. If you are looking for a flangey kind of tone, something sounds very tight. You might choose to turn these off. That's character kind of stuff, which you've got to sort of work your way into. Is that the thing I'm looking for? Be cautious because this will create so much width. Just be cautious that you don't end up creating so much width on your individual sounds that when you get them into the mix, they're just everywhere. I have noticed listening to that piece that I made that there are times that because there's so much happening that something that's panned off on one side is completely appearing on the other side. But that's great because Reason has the ability to narrow our stereo signals down. I considered putting a stereo narrower in here, but I just thought it's an extra knob that's not really that necessary. I also wondered, should I have a pan knob for this? But it makes no sense ultimately because you're going to create your panning on the mixer, because that's mix panning far more than if you're creating your panning here, in the sense that if I said, oh, I'm going to pan this to one side, and then the echo is going to appear in the center. But if that's the case, if you want that, that's quite consistent with reality anyway, because the room is going to have the room sound come back sort of from everywhere, and you still need a center for your sound. If your sound doesn't have a center, you are going to end up with a lot of difficulties in the mix, which I see people doing. That's it. It's a surprisingly simple unit that can deliver really beautiful results surprisingly easily and quickly. And so because of that, again, just don't overdo it. In my mix, I may have overdone it, but the whole aim there was to be dramatic, and I must say I really like that mix. You know, I put it up in the lounge room with the sub and everything. It sounds really gorgeous with all of these, and these are a big part of that, because when I compare even out there to the dryer mix, it's like, yeah, that's an interesting mix, and there are things I like about it, like the saxophone, in quotes, comes forward a little bit more without the heavy ministrations of this. But we also do lose some of this tremendous richness that this brings. So if you like the device, please pop over to my Ko-fi. Again, there will be the QR code and there is the link down below. If you are struggling to make your own mixes work out the way that you think that they should, then please hire me. This is what I am designed to do. You know, where God puts us all here with some kind of purpose in mind, that is the size of my puzzle piece to be able to do and understand this kind of stuff. So please hire me to work with you to help you get a much better result, which A, is you're going to be a lot happier with, and B, you're more likely to connect with the people who do want to be fans, the people who want and need to hear what it is that you're doing. Please don't keep shooting yourself in the foot by not being able to deliver. Otherwise, it would be like Van Halen continuing to try to be Van Halen with me as their guitarist and wondering why they don't become what you know of as Van Halen, because I suck. If I were so egotistical as to say, no, Van Halen, you can't sack me because I'm me, they wouldn't be anywhere until they had Eddie. Okay, get out there. You have a great day.